Joining us on the line is Alex Traiman. He is CEO and Jerusalem bureau chief of Jewish News Syndicate. He's here to talk about the results of the Israeli election that are going to put Bibi Netanyahu back into power. Alex, thanks so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So obviously the results shocked a lot of the left-wing media. I was not particularly shocked. I thought that Netanyahu was going to come back, although I didn't think that he was going to come back with this wide a mandate. Netanyahu is going to take about 32 seats in the upcoming Knesset. More importantly, a lot of his allied parties took wide swaths of seats. RZP, which is a further right party than Likud, it's sort of the settler party. They took 14 seats. The very religious parties, Shas and UTJ, took another round of wide variety. It'll be a 65-seat majority for Bibi Netanyahu, who's expected by most polls to be at most a 61 or 62-seat majority. What's your big takeaway from the election?
Well, the first is that the right wing scored a 20-seat gap at 65 to 45 over Israel's left wing. So that shows very clearly that Israel is a right-wing government. It also demonstrates that the electorate was very upset over the last 4 elections in which the opposition tried at all costs to prevent Netanyahu from staying in power. And they took their mandate back and voted overwhelmingly to put Netanyahu back into office.
So, Alex, one of the things that has cropped up in the aftermath of the election is the tremendous alarmism that you're now seeing in the media. You're hearing hints of it from the Biden White House about the inclusion in the government of RZP-OY, which is the right-wing party to the right of Likud. They're particularly exercised about not B'Tselem Smotrich, who is one of the members of that coalition, but about Itamar Ben-Gvir, who has a history that is more extreme than sort of his current political stance. There's been talk that the White House will not work with Ben-Gvir if he is given a ministerial position. There's been talk that the EU will boycott Israel if he's given a ministerial position. How credible is all of that, and how does that impact the calculations for Bibi in forming a cabinet?
Well, I find it odd that those same players didn't protest when the previous government brought the Ram Party, which is affiliated with the Muslim Brotherhood, into the government. Ben-Gvir does have more extreme views than some of the other Knesset members, but represents a large swath of the Israeli populace with the views that he has. And let's also remember that this is one Knesset member out of 120, and Ben-Gvir is not going to be the prime minister. The prime minister is going to be Benjamin Netanyahu. Netanyahu has been the prime minister already for 15 years. Everybody knows that Netanyahu is the king politician in Israel and knows how to maintain discipline in his governments. And I think that he will definitely be able to keep Ben-Gvir in check, while at the same time allowing Ben-Gvir to institute some of the security policies that resonated so deeply with the Israeli public.
And this is one of the things that people are forgetting is that under the last government, under the Lapid government, and even under the prior Bibi government, which was basically hamstrung by lack of majority, security protocols in Israel were loosened to a certain extent. Bibi was not able to govern as right as he wanted to because his coalition was essentially a center coalition, even when he was holding power or even when he had a government that was awaiting a new election. The same thing is not going to be true here. Some of the policies that Ben-Gvir is promoting are popular in Israel because, frankly, they're not all that crazy. Ben-Gvir is promoting, for example, the idea that people who are associated with terrorism or people who stump for the destruction of the state of Israel probably should not be allowed to live inside the country, which doesn't seem all that radical, actually. He has suggested that Israeli soldiers be allowed to use live rounds against people who are throwing Molotov cocktails against them, as opposed to, say, tear gas or rubber bullets. Again, doesn't seem that radical because a Molotov cocktail actually is a deadly instrument. And this sort of stuff is being portrayed by the media as wild right-wing sort of stuff. But my understanding is that until the last few years, that was actually common policy. And when it comes to the idea of deporting people who actually wish to destroy the country, I'm not sure there are a lot of countries that wish to have people who openly advocate the destruction of the country living inside them.
Well, during the last government, terrorism really spiked in Israel, and people feel that their lives are in danger. Soldiers and police officers feel that their lives are in danger because the rules of engagement have been tightened to near impossible degrees. And Israelis really view security as the #1 factor that the government is supposed to provide. I think that people have to understand that governing from the right is actually the most stable type of government that Netanyahu can put together at this point. Going towards the center will just be bringing the opposition into his own cabinet, which is you just cannot do in the complicated parliamentary coalition system. So people are going to have to let Netanyahu govern, let Ben-Gvir tighten up the rules of engagement and increase security for the Israeli people. And I actually think that this is probably the most stable coalition that Netanyahu has ever had and has the possibility to last a full 4-year term. And considering that we've had election after election over the last 3.5 years, that's something that the Israeli populace would really welcome.
That's Alex Traiman, CEO and Jerusalem Bureau Chief for Jewish News Syndicate. Really appreciate the time, Alex, and thanks for the insight.
Thanks so much.